We'll now review the average costing method, and it will be a little different depending on if you're using the perpetual system or the periodic system. To review the cost of goods sold formula, this is important to remember. Many textbooks present it as beginning inventory plus purchases, and that's what's on your shelf. That's what you have for sale. If you subtract ending inventory, that gives you cost of goods sold. But if you need a better visual, beginning inventory plus purchases, again, that's available. And if you don't sell it, it ends up in ending inventory. But if you do sell it, that's your cost of goods sold. What are the only two things you can do with your inventory? If you sell it, that's your cost of goods sold number. If you don't sell it, that's your ending inventory. So that if you take these two numbers, it should equal the original available for sale. Important to remember because this is a good check figure. So we'll look first at the moving average method as opposed to the weighted average method, although some textbooks present it differently. Looking at an example of beginning inventory, various purchases and sales, same process, figure out what's available for sale, create your list for cost of goods sold, and then figure out what's left, what is not sold. So looking at this list a little bit differently than is easiest for using the LIFO-FIFO, but when using an average method, it's better to keep everything in order to kind of follow the flow. But what are you calculating? You're calculating the costs and the ending inventory, not the revenue. And what are you solving for? Remember the journal entry. You're not solving for revenue, so be careful not to take that $35 amount. That's your sales price. You're trying to figure out the cost. So what's available? 950 units at a cost of $22,225. Now you have to assign the cost. So at the 15th, before you can assign a cost, you have to figure out, well, what's my average? 7,000 divided by 325 units gives you an average cost of $21.54. And then figure out what's left over after that. So you can actually think about this new balance as your new beginning balance. Beginning plus purchases, that's what's available for sale. But now, because we're using the perpetual system, we're constantly recording cost of goods sold. We have to constantly update what our new average is. And with a moving average, it will change, more than likely, unless, of course, your cost stayed the same. And then what is your ending inventory? What's left over? Which would, of course, be the beginning inventory for your next period. So we have a total cost of goods sold, 675 units, 15,406. What's left over? 275 units, 6,819. Add those together, it should equal the original available for sale. The moving average cost changes with each sale. Now, looking at a periodic system, because you don't calculate cost of goods sold until the end of the period, you figure out one average for the entire period. Now, can you see how this differs from a moving average? Although there are some textbooks that call it a weighted average, but if they're teaching you the perpetual, that actually technically is the moving average. Another key to remember, make sure you don't round the per unit. Now, this was rounded just for presentation for this PowerPoint, but it's best to keep that per unit amount in your calculator and then multiply it by the number of units sold. Wait to round until your last number, but there will always be rounding issues when using either the weighted average or the moving average. That's okay. Looking at a comparison, with a perpetual, you calculate cost of goods sold with every sale, and you also update inventory with every sale. The moving average is the average cost that changes or moves with every sale. Periodic, that's more actually the weighted average. You wait until the end of the period to calculate cost of goods sold and ending inventory. So it's more of a true weighted average than the perpetual moving average. But it is very similar, both methods. It's just timing that makes these changes. But it does affect your final income numbers.